Good afternoon, and thank you all for being here. Thank you for being here and joining us for such an important bill signing. And before I begin, I know that we have a number of very courageous victims here with us today, and I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for your courage, for your determination, for your willingness to speak out and speak up, because it's clearly made a difference. You know, in a few minutes we'll sign this bill, and it wouldn't have happened without your advocacy. And so thank you for being willing to step up. And, you know, the best thing that we can do to respect you and do, you know, honor to your courage is to take action. And that's what this is about today. Taking action to prevent this from happening and to support other victims. And that's what this is about. We are blessed to live in a place like Rhode Island where a bill of this kind has attracted so many lawmakers and supporters. So bear with me for a second. I'd like to recognize every one of them, beginning with our state treasurer. Thank you for being here. We have Senator Lynch Prado, who's with us. Thank you for being here. Of course, Rep. O'Brien just walked in. The bill's sponsors, Rep. McEntee and Senator Nesselbush. Thank you guys. This didn't happen overnight, right? This didn't happen overnight. But you didn't give up, did you? You stayed at it, and at it, and at it. We want to thank both of you for your work. And Annie, especially to you. Sometimes this is known as Annie's bill. So I want to thank you so much for your courage and your determination, and both of these bill sponsors. I'd like to recognize Rep. Craven, who's here, Rep. Casimiro, Rep. Caldwell, Rep. Cortland, Rep. Donovan, Rep. Ruggiero, Rep. Tansey, and Rep. Lyle. Thank you all for being here. I think I got everybody. Rep. O'Brien, who just walked in, thank you for joining us. This was a real group effort, and you guys stuck with it to get it over the finish line, and I want to say thank you to all of you. In a few minutes, we'll sign the legislation, a ceremonial signing. It extends the statute of limitations for childhood sex abuse claims from 7 years to 35 years after the victim turns 18. It's a monumental change. So victims will now have until they are 53 years old to sue their abuser or the institution that enabled their abuse. And it also gives victims up to 7 years to file a lawsuit after discovering or remembering that an abuse had taken place. Now, most of us in this room can't imagine the trauma of going through this sort of abuse. And it's horrifying, it's disturbing, you can't really get your head around it. But what we're saying today is we're not running away from victims. We're embracing victims and enabling them to take the time that they need and muster the courage that they need in order to be able to come forward and seek the justice that they deserve. And we know from study after study and from experiences that often it takes time. It takes years sometimes to remember because you've blocked it out in order to survive. Years to remember the details, years to be able to come forward. And so by going from 7 to 35 years, we're just making sure that everybody has the amount of time that they need in order to be able to come forward and seek justice. And by the way, most states already do this. Rhode Island needed to catch up in order to make this happen. So I would say abuse can't be tolerated, won't be tolerated, and shouldn't be tolerated. And when it happens, we need to know that we have a fair justice system and a fair set of laws so that victims can come forward and seek justice. And so that's what this bill is all about. I have been a supporter of it from the beginning. Carol and I have met time and time again on this. Governor, you're still going to support it? You're still going to support it? Absolutely. And I'm incredibly proud of you for sticking with it through the thick and the thin over more than 1 year in order to get it done. So with that, please join me as I introduce Rep. Carol McEntee, who's the driving force behind this bill in the House.
Thank you, Governor Raimondo, for your support right from the start. We were here last summer, and I believe we had about 18 reps that came forward to support this bill, and several senators, including Senator Nesselbush. And you sent a letter. You stuck to your word. You were there from the start. So thank you very much. I got to thank my colleagues. I mean, I had 58 co-sponsors on this bill. It doesn't get any better than that. And many of you were here today. The governor already recognized you, and it's on my list. I don't need to go through it again, but thank you, thank you, thank you for coming. But there are other people I need to recognize. Peg Langhammer from day one. She's sitting right here in the front. She was key in getting this legislation passed. She helped me. She helped reason with the speaker. We worked hard, but he kept his word. I got to give Speaker Mattiello big kudos on this bill, because he and I sat down for many hours and we discussed it, and he came through in the end, and I appreciate all his support. But also I have to thank Danica Iacocca, who was relentless in her pursuit of this bill. She's the Speaker's lawyer standing back there. Thank you, Danica. And of course, my right-hand man in judiciary, my chairman, Craven, it couldn't have happened without him. So thank you, Chairman. I appreciate all the support. But the real heroes here are the survivors who came forward. My sister, Dr. Hagan Webb, she's why I did this. She's why I know so much about this. She is why we are here today. But it's not just for her, it's also for Jim Scanlon, who's in the front here, who came back tirelessly every year, each committee, testifying. Catherine Robb from Child USA, she's been here since the start. She's a survivor and an advocate for Child USA. And behind her is Sarah Klein, who is a victim of Dr. Larry Nassar. She was an Olympic gymnast, and she's here with her daughter, Genevieve. Welcome, Genevieve. And Pasco Troya, he has been here testifying, another survivor. I can't thank you all enough. I know how hard it was, and we did it the first year, and it was devastating to come back the second time. And we were determined not to have to do this year after year. And with the support of the governor and the House leadership and the Senate leadership, we were able to get it done. So thank you all very much. But to the victims and survivors, you were heard, and that's what matters. And now you have the time, those of you who still qualify under the law, to bring a lawsuit. This is your chance to get justice. So don't give up. We heard you here. I believe that the courts will hear you as well. So this bill's for you. And with that, I'd like to introduce my sister. As the governor referred to the bill, as I always do, as Annie's bill. I would like to introduce my sister, Dr. Hagan Webb, who this is how it all got started.
All these microphones are a little intimidating, but I'll do my best. Like Carol, I need to thank Carol more than anyone else. We spent hours and hours on the phone in the middle of the night, back and forth, morning and night, actually. And thank you, Donna, for sponsoring the Senate side of the bill, and all the leadership that's here and the people that co-sponsored the bill. I am forever grateful to all of you. I'm grateful that you listened, and I'm grateful that you fought for us, because that means the world. We couldn't obviously do it without you. And You taught me a lot about legislature. You know, there were times along the way that we had to make compromises, and we swallowed hard to do it, but we came out with a great bill. This really pushes us forward, and I appreciate it so much. Remember, we came from, the people I want to thank the most is the survivors, obviously. You're my friends, you're my colleagues, you're my brothers and sisters. When we spoke, remember, we all spoke for the people who can't. But we spoke for them knowing that there was a time when we couldn't speak. There was a time 10, 15 years ago, or a little bit more before that I couldn't speak at all. I couldn't come forward. I was scared of my own shadow. I was dealing with the stuff myself. And we speak for the ones who are still in that place because we know it's so well. And this bill helps them come out of their shadows. It helps them speak up, helps them name the perpetrators, name the people who helped them. And that ultimately helps children. It rescues future children from being abused because shining the light of day on this is what makes the difference. And the children of Rhode Island are safer today because of this bill. I really do believe that. We've already had people coming forward to me, to other survivor advocates, to Carol and the lawyers out there, and to the press, you know, speaking their truth. So it's made a difference already. And from that, I don't want to take credit for all of this, but it seemed like there was a snowball that started to happen. The bishop released a list of perpetrators' names, and soon after that, we know the Attorney General of Rhode Island, Peter Nerona, he's got child abuse on his radar, and we thank him for that. So things are happening, names are being named. Like I said, people are safer. This is a victory for us. It's a victory for speaking out, a victory for saying that, you know what, you don't win. You bad guys, you don't win. We're going to speak up, and we're going to have the last word. So I hope you all feel up here.
And now I'd like to introduce my sponsor in the Senate, the Honorable Senator Donna Nesselbush.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I can't tell you how pleased I am to be here today for this bill signing. This bill, along with marriage equality, is certainly among the legislative acts, if you will, that I have been most humbled and most proud to sponsor. And one of the many things I love about being a senator is the chance to help people. And I remember well the day I was having a conversation with my law partner about a client that we frankly couldn't help because of this statute of limitations problem. And although I have been involved fighting against sexual assault since probably the day as a young adult that I understood what it was, because of course it is a scourge on society, among our most heinous crimes. And I remember saying to myself, as a legislator I so often do, there ought to be a law. How can this be? And it was literally at this particular conversation that I said, I'm going to begin to research that. And so I began to look into this statute of limitations issue here in Rhode Island, and much to my surprise and pleasure, I might add, I realized that states across the country were actually engaging in statute of limitations reform. And it was, some might say it was random, but I always say God writes straight with crooked lines. But I had recently met Representative Carol McEntee, and we were at that time working on the parentage bill together. And I said, Carol seems like a great legislator. We've working on this other bill together. Let me call Carol and see what she thinks and if she would be willing to put this in on the House side. Well, whoa, what a blessing that was. What a miracle that was. Because Carol, of course, in that first conversation, shared with me the very poignant story about her sister and told me not only was she in, but that she would give that bill 2,000%. And I have to say, Representative Carol McEntee gave it even more than that. So let's give her a big round of applause. And we absolutely would not be here today if it weren't for the support of Senate leadership. I have to thank Senate President Dominic Ruggiero, Majority Leader Mike McCaffrey, and of course our fabulous, I'm so glad that Chairwoman Erin Lynch can be here with us. She was so instrumental. As Carol was doing on her side, I was talking the ears off on these people at the end of the session, and everybody was doing their best. I see Jake here somewhere. Is Jake still here? I want to give him a shout out because I think he is the Majority Leader's legal counsel, and like I'm sure Representative McEntee did with Danica, I did that with Jake and others on our side. But, I have to say, there were bumps along the way. I mean, there were times when, it didn't look hopeful, frankly. And Carol and I would be talking, Annie, I would talk with Captain Rob, literally at all times of the day. We were often on the phone before 8 a.m. saying, how are we going to do this? And I remember saying, failure is impossible. I don't see the path at this point, but we will get there. And I often think as a senator that every generation has its calling. The opportunity to, ease the pain of human suffering and to somehow help the fight for justice. And working on this bill was, among the most amazing experiences in my life. And I want to say to all the victims, Dr. Ann Hagan Webb, Jim Scanlon, Hub Brennan, my new friend Catherine Robb, that all of your stories, as well as the stories of so many others, have really indelibly marked my heart and soul, and I will carry you in my heart and with me for the rest of my life. I can never forget the stories that you all have shared with me. It's a triumphant moment. This is a moment where we can say government does work for the people. And as I said, there were times we had a different House bill than the Senate bill. And as I said initially on the Senate floor, what we as a state need to do is marry the best aspects of the Senate bill with the best aspects of the House bill so that together we can significantly move this cause forward. And again, I really want to thank Chairwoman Lynch Prada, who I'm really grateful that you could be here with us today, Mike McCaffrey, Dominic Ruggiero, and so many others, Peg Langhammer here in the front row. Everybody came together, and the governor, as Carol said, in it, with us from the beginning, always on the right side of justice issues. I appreciate that, Governor. And, Rhode Island made a significant step forward, but another thing, although we are here at a triumphant moment, is to realize that when I first realized through Child U.S. Advocacy that they were ranking states throughout the nation, as the governor sort of alluded, Rhode Island started this game at a 0 out of 5 in terms of our statute of limitations reform. And pleased to say that with the passage of this legislation, we are now at 50% jump forward. We're at a 2.5 out of 5. So we've made a great victory here, and I know that I will not rest until we have no statute of limitations, because in my mind, if you are the victim of that type of crime, whenever you can get the courage and summon the courage to bring forth the truth of what happened to you, and if these cases are often very cold cases, if you can possibly get the evidence to prove your case, well, darn it, the courthouse doors ought to be open, and I won't rest until we achieve that. But for today, it's a moment. Thank you.
So if there's any reps or senators who sponsored it who want to be part of this, or any of the victims or advocates who would like to be here, we'd love to have you.
Excuse me? Yeah.
Thank you all, you guys. I don't know that I've ever seen you all assembled, but
I didn't know how you wanted to be there, so I'll leave it up to whoever.
and classy, I like it.
Yeah.
Very nice.
right, first we'll do the House bill.
Nice.
Wow.
Wow.
Michelle, Carol.
Thank you.
Annie?